Welcome to today's lesson. We're going to work on describing your daily routine in Spanish. This is super important for everyday conversations, whether you're telling someone when you wake up or what you usually have for dinner. We'll dive into regular verb conjugations in the present tense, covering verbs like despertarse, desayunar, and trabajar. Let's jump right in.
Buenos días, soy Emily. Buenos días, soy Emily.
Great job. Emily introduced herself with,
Buenos días, soy Emily.
which means good morning. I'm Emily. Notice how soy translates to I am. It's the standard way to introduce yourself in Spanish. Keep that phrase in mind. Now, let's talk about your daily activities.
¿A qué hora te levantas? ¿A qué hora te levantas?
James just asked,
¿A qué hora te levantas?
which means what time do you get up? The key word here is
Levantas,
the present tense form of
levantar.
which translates to get up. It ends in as because this is directed at to, the informal you. And remember, don't forget the accent on que.
Me levanto a las 7. Me levanto a las 7.
Emily responded perfectly with,
Me levanto a las 7.
meaning I get up at 7. Notice the me, it indicates the subject performing the action. A las siete means at 7. Make sure to include that a. Now, let's check out verb conjugations in more detail.
Desayuno, café y tostadas. Desayuno, café y tostadas.
James tells us what he has for breakfast,
Desayuno, café y tostadas.
translating to I have coffee and toast,
Desayuno,
is the yo-I form of
desayunar.
which means to have breakfast, though ending indicates it's yo. Keep in mind that in Spanish, we often drop the pronoun,
Trabajo en una oficina. Trabajo en una oficina.
Emily describes her job by saying,
Trabajo en una oficina.
which means I work in an office,
Trabajo.
stems from the verb,
Trabajar.
meaning to work. This is the yo form, and as we talked about, it's common to leave out the pronoun in Spanish. A handy phrase to know for your introductions.
Almuerzo con mi familia. Almuerzo con mi familia.
Now James mentions his lunch with family.
Almuerzo con mi familia.
I have lunch with my family,
Almuerzo.
is the yo form of
Almorzar.
which means to have lunch. The word
Familia.
family is crucial for socializing, so make a note of it.
Ceno a las 8. Ceno a las 8.
Emily mentions she has dinner at 8,
Ceno a las 8. Ceno.
is the yo form of
Cenar.
which means to have dinner. Remember, in Spanish we often use
Ar.
when talking about time. A key detail to keep in mind.
¿Qué haces por la noche? ¿Qué haces por la noche?
James asks,
¿Qué haces por la noche?
meaning what do you do in the evening? Pay attention to por la noche, that means in the evening and is an essential phrase. This is a great moment to practice the verbs we've been working on today.
Por la noche veo la televisión. Por la noche veo la televisión.
Emily responds,
Por la noche veo la televisión.
in the evening, I watch television,
Veo.
is the yo form of
Ver.
to see, watch. This shows how we can connect the phrases we've learned today. Great job.
Yo leo un libro. Yo leo un libro.
Me despierto a las 6 de la mañana. Me despierto a las 6 de la mañana.
Desayuno cereales y fruta. Desayuno cereales y fruta.
Trabajo de 9 a 5. Trabajo de 9 a 5.
Almuerzo con mis colegas. Almuerzo con mis colegas.
Today, we're diving into reflexive verbs. These verbs describe actions you perform on yourself. They require a reflexive pronoun me, t, c, nos, os, c before the verb. Think of it as I wash myself, not simply I wash. We'll learn how to conjugate them correctly.
Me lavo las manos. Me lavo las manos.
Notice that the reflexive pronoun comes before the verb.
Me lavo.
Means I wash myself. It's a very common mistake for English speakers to put it after the verb, so practice saying it correctly. Also, make sure the pronoun agrees with the subject yo, tú, él, ella, etc.
Me visto muy rápido. Me visto muy rápido.
Let's look at some common reflexive verbs. These are actions you frequently do to yourself.
Despertarse.
To wake up,
Lavarse.
to wash oneself,
Vestirse.
to get dressed,
Acostarse.
to go to bed, and
Sentarse.
to sit down. Memorizing these will greatly improve your fluency.
Nos sentamos en el parque. Nos sentamos en el parque.
Here's a handy chart to help you remember the reflexive pronouns and which subject they correspond to: yo, me, tú, ti, él, ella, usted, si, nosotros, nos, vosotros, os, ellos, ellas, usteds, si. Make sure to use the correct pronoun to avoid confusion.
Se levanta temprano. Se levanta temprano.
Some reflexive verbs are irregular in their conjugation, especially in the yo and nosotros forms. For example,
Dormirse.
to fall asleep becomes yo me duermo and nosotros nos dormimos. Don't worry, we'll focus on these later, but it's good to be aware of them.
Me peino el pelo. Me peino el pelo.
Sometimes, reflexive verbs are followed by direct objects. You're still performing the action on yourself, but there's something you're acting upon. For example, me peino el pelo, I comb my hair. The hair is the direct object, even though the action is reflexive. Be mindful of the object's placement.
Nosotros acostamos tarde. Nosotros acostamos tarde.
You can add extra emphasis to reflexive verbs by placing the reflexive pronoun right after the subject. For example, instead of yo me lavo, you could say yo me lavo las manos. This simply adds a bit more focus on the action and who is performing it. It's a stylistic choice.
Ellos se preparan para la fiesta. Ellos se preparan para la fiesta.
It can be tricky to distinguish between reflexive and non-reflexive verbs. Ask yourself, is the action being performed on the subject themselves? If so, it's reflexive. For example, to remember something
Recordar.
is non-reflexive, but to remember yourself
Recordarse.
is reflexive.
Nosotros aburrimos. Nosotros aburrimos.
Several verbs express emotions or feelings reflexively. Examples include
Aburrirse.
to get bored,
Enojarse.
to get angry,
Preocuparse.
to worry, and
Sorprenderse.
to be surprised. These verbs usually express a change in emotional state.
Me sorprendo mucho. Me sorprendo mucho.
Now, let's practice. Describe your morning routine using as many reflexive verbs as possible. Think about what you do when you wake up, what you do to get ready, and how you feel. Can you create a short paragraph about it?
Me levanto y me ducho. Me levanto y me ducho.
Let's quickly review. Reflexive verbs describe actions you perform on yourself. They require a reflexive pronoun which precedes the verb. Remember to conjugate correctly, paying attention to irregular verbs and object placement. Recognizing both reflexive and non-reflexive forms is key.
Me visto y desayuno. Me visto y desayuno.
Okay, time for a short quiz on reflexive verbs. Question 1. Which pronoun corresponds to the subject nosotros? The correct answer is nos. This has been the focus. Now, apply what you've learned.
Se enoja fácilmente. Se enoja fácilmente.
Today, we'll be learning about a simple way to express the future in Spanish, using the verb,
Ira.
which means to go followed by the infinitive of another verb. Essentially, our infinitive translates to going to in English. It's a fantastic way to talk about plans and intentions. For example, voy a comer means I am going to eat.
Voy a estudiar español. Voy a estudiar español.
On a sentence
Voy a estudiar español.
is fantastic. Note the subtle flow of the A. A common mistake is forgetting to include the after voy, which would be incorrect. Also, pay attention to the rolled R in estudiar. Remember, always state the infinitive after don't conjugate it.
Vamos a comer pizza. Vamos a comer pizza.
Finito used,
Vamos a comer pizza.
which is excellent. Vamos is the we are going to form. Notice the change from voy a to vamos a when using nosotros we. Remember this conjugation change. Make sure you're conjugating er correctly with the appropriate pronoun for who's doing the action. Misusing this can change the meaning entirely. James finishes up with
Yo leo un libro.
meaning, I read a book. Notice how the pronoun yo can be left out since the verb form makes it clear who's doing the action. This highlights a critical aspect of Spanish grammar: the verb does the talking. To wrap things up, today we learned how to describe our daily routine using regular present tense verbs like despertarse, desayunar, trabajar, and cenar. Remember the O ending for yo. Also, try using the phrases alas me levanto and yo alas to describe what you do. Keep it up, and hasta la próxima. Okay, let's quickly recap what we've covered today. We've practiced talking about our daily routines using phrases like
Me levanto, desayuno.
and.
Por la noche.
We also looked at reflexive verbs and how to use them correctly to describe what you do. Alright, time for a quick quiz to see how well you understood everything. Question 1. What is the primary focus of this lesson? The correct answer is describing daily routines and activities. This was the whole point: learning how to express what you do every day. Next question. What is?
Por la noche.
The answer is in the evening. It's a really useful phrase to use when talking about what you do after dark. Fantastic! You all seem to have grasped the concepts really well. Now, for your homework.
Prova scrivere 5 frasi sulla tua giornata. Usa i verbi che abbiamo imparato oggi. Prova scrivere 5 frasi sulla tua giornata. Usa i verbi che abbiamo imparato oggi.